I stood next to my husband, smiling as he introduced me to his friends, pretending everything was normal, pretending I wasn't sinking in. On the outside, we seemed like the perfect couple, but only I knew that there were cracks beneath the shiny surface of our marriage. He had insisted that I come to this party. "This will be fun," he had said, his hand warm on mine, his eyes full of that familiar charm he wore so well. But there was something about the way his friends looked at me that made my stomach twist. Too long, too curious, like they knew something I didn't. I brushed it off, forcing myself to laugh when one of them cracked a joke. But inside, my chest tightened with Unes. I held his arm tightly when he pulled me closer, almost too tightly, and he looked down at me with surprise before giving that charming laugh of his. He thought I was drunk, thought my cheeks were flushed because of the wine. But no, it was rage. Quiet, suffocating rage that I swallowed with every forced sip of my drink. His friends were watching us, whispering among themselves, and I realized then that they already knew. Maybe they had known all along. Maybe I was the only one blind enough to believe in the story he had painted of us. Every smile, every toast, every cheer in that glittering room suddenly felt like mockery aimed directly at me. I excused myself, pretending I needed the restroom, but I didn't go there. Instead, I slipped outside into the cold night air, my hands shaking as I clutched my phone. My reflection in the glass door startled me, eyes sharp, lips pressed in a thin line. I didn't look like the woman I used to be. I looked like someone else, someone I had never met before. He came after me a few minutes later, his tone playful. "There you are," he said, placing a hand on my shoulder. "You're not upset, are you?" He smiled as if nothing in the world could possibly be wrong. I turned to him slowly, forcing my lips into a curve, matching his energy. "Of course not," I whispered, my voice steady even though my heart was splitting open inside. I decided, at that very moment, that I would not confront him here, not tonight. No, tonight I would smile, laugh, and play my role perfectly. Because betrayal deserves more than just anger, it deserves patience, calculation, and the kind of revenge that stings forever. So I leaned into him, allowed him to kiss my temple, and we walked back into the party like the flawless couple everyone thought we were. But in my heart, something dangerous had awakened. He didn't know it yet, but this night, the night he thought he had gotten away with everything, was the night I began writing the end of our story.
Back inside, the music pulsed harder, and the laughter around us seemed louder, almost suffocating. I clung to his arm, smiling so perfectly that not even the closest I could catch a crack in my mask. His friends clapped him on the back, praising him for something trivial, and I stood there, nodding, pretending, but I watched him carefully. Every glance he stole at that woman, every flicker of guilt he tried to hide behind his smirk, I memorized it. He thought I was blind, but I saw everything. When the party finally thinned out, he suggested we leave. "It's late," he said, his hand brushing my waist in that possessive way he always did in public. I nodded, slipping into the car beside him, my smile never faltering. The drive home was quiet, almost too quiet. He hummed to the radio, relaxed, comfortable, as if the night had gone perfectly. My eyes, though, were locked on the window, the city lights blurring past. My mind was racing, not with sadness, but with something sharper, colder. I was already imagining how to make him feel the same sting he had burned into me. At home, he kissed me goodnight, so casually, so easily, as if betrayal had no weight at all. He fell asleep quickly, the rise and fall of his chest steady, peaceful. I lay beside him, staring at the ceiling in the dark. My heart no longer hurt, it burned. I realized that trust, once shattered, could never be pieced back the same, and yet, I wouldn't leave him. Not yet. Because walking away would be too easy for him. He needed to taste the bitterness of his own actions, to feel his carefully built world collapse piece by piece. The next morning, when he smiled at me over breakfast, I smiled back sweeter than ever. He had no idea that the woman sitting across from him, the one he thought he had fooled, was no longer his wife. She was something else now. Something far more dangerous. Days passed, and I became an actress in my own home. I laughed at his jokes, kissed him goodbye at the door, and welcomed him back every evening as if nothing had changed. To him, life was normal. To me, every second was a careful calculation. I began observing more closely, noting the patterns in his behavior. When he left for work, when he came home late, the subtle smell of perfume that didn't belong to me lingering on his shirts. He thought I was blind, but I was already documenting everything. Quietly, patiently. One afternoon, I followed him. I didn't trail behind like in the movies, I was smarter than that. I knew where he would go, the small bookstore tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. And there she was, young, vibrant, her laughter echoing as she leaned across the counter. Toward him. He touched her hand so naturally, as if I had ceased to exist. I stood across the street, hidden, watching them. My hands didn't tremble. My eyes didn't even water. Instead, I felt a strange calmness, the kind that only comes when pain turns into something colder, sharper. He had made his choice, and now I would make mine. That evening, when he returned home, I served him dinner. He talked about his busy day, the endless meetings, and I listened, nodding sweetly. Inside, I laughed. The liar didn't know that his every move was now part of the story I was weaving, but I didn't confront him. Not yet. I needed him to feel safe, untouchable. I needed him to believe that I was still the loving, clueless wife. Because when I finally moved, when I finally revealed what I knew, it would break him in a way he could never recover from. That night, while he slept soundly beside me, I unlocked my phone and began typing. A list. Names. Dates. Places. Every detail of his betrayal carefully recorded. Not for me, but for him. So that one day, when I placed the evidence before his eyes, he would see his entire double life laid bare, and then, I would smile because the sweetest revenge is not in anger, it is in silence, patience, and precision. The list grew longer with each passing week. He didn't even notice how much more attentive I had become, how closely I watched him. He mistook it for affection, when in reality, it was surveillance. I started planting little tests. Subtle, harmless things, at least to him. I asked where he was at certain times, casually, with a smile. His answers rarely matched the truth I already knew. Every lie he told became another thread in the web I was spinning around him. One evening, he suggested another late meeting. I kissed his cheek and wished him luck, but once he was gone, I slipped into the car and drove to the bookstore. My timing was perfect. Through the glass window, I saw them together again, her laugh too bright, his hand brushing against her wrist like a rehearsed performance. I didn't storm in. I didn't scream. Instead, I took a picture. Then another. I walked away with proof, my heart cold but steady. The trap was nearly ready. At home, I laid beside him in bed, his arm lazily draped around me. He slept soundly, unaware that I was wide awake, staring at the ceiling with a silent smile. He thought he was the clever one, the one in control. But I was already holding the knife, and he hadn't even realized his neck was exposed. Weeks later, when I felt the timing was right, I began the real game. I created an anonymous email address. From it, I sent the first picture. Just one. No words, no explanation. A silent message of warning. The next day, I watched him. He was restless, his hands fidgeting, his eyes darting to his phone every few seconds. He smiled at me, but it was tight, forced. I smiled back sweetly, pretending not to notice. Inside, I was exhilarated. Every few days, another photo arrived in his inbox. Always anonymous. Always silent. His confidence began to crumble, piece by piece. He grew paranoid, snapping at small things, checking over his shoulder as if the walls themselves were watching, and all the while, I remained his perfect wife, soft voice, gentle smile, warm embrace. The woman he thought he had fooled was the same woman orchestrating his slow destruction, but this was only the beginning, because exposing him wasn't enough. I wanted him to feel the weight of betrayal, the humiliation, the fear that I had lived within silence, and soon, very soon, he would. The breaking point came at another party. The same kind of night where his arrogance usually flourished. He invited his friends, their laughter echoing through our living room, glasses clinking, music low but steady. I wore the dress he liked best, the one that made me look like the devoted wife standing proudly by his side. What he didn't know was that this night had been chosen carefully. Every piece was already set in place. Halfway through the evening, as the drinks flowed and the conversation grew louder, I slipped away into the hallway and opened my phone. With just a few taps, I sent out the final set of photos, the ones I had saved for this moment. But this time, I didn't send them to him. I sent them to every guest in the house. One by one, notifications buzzed. I watched the confusion ripple across the room. Friends lifted their phones, brows furrowed, whispers starting to spread. And then came the silence. The kind of silence that crushes air from the room. On every screen was the truth. Him with her, arms too close, lips brushing, moments that could never be mistaken for innocent. He looked around, suddenly aware of the shift. His smile faltered. A friend's wife gasped, covering her mouth. Another shook his head in disbelief. His best friend put his phone down with a disgusted sigh. Finally, his eyes met mine. Panic. Pure, raw panic. What is this? He stammered, trying to laugh, trying to dismiss it. These are fake. I tilted my head, feigning innocence. Are they? His face drained of color. Everyone was watching him now, waiting for an explanation that didn't exist. The room felt like a courtroom, and I was both the accuser and the judge. He tried to speak again, but the weight of evidence crushed him. Every guest now saw him for what he was. The charming husband, the successful man, exposed as nothing more than a liar. I raised my glass, calm and unshaken. To betrayal, I said softly, my voice cutting through the silence. May we never be blinded by it again. No one toasted with me. They were too busy staring at him, their judgment heavy, their respect gone, and that was the moment. His world didn't just crack, it collapsed, but my revenge wasn't complete. Not yet. His shame that night was only the beginning. The whispers of betrayal spread faster than fire. By the next morning, the pictures had left the circle of friends and landed where he feared most, at his workplace. His colleagues, his boss, even business partners who once respected him now saw him through the lens of humiliation. The proud man who once stood tall was suddenly reduced to someone hiding from the very people he used to command. At home, he begged. He pleaded for forgiveness. His arrogance stripped away. But I wasn't the same woman anymore. The pain he caused me had burned away every last piece of weakness. I told him the truth, that forgiveness was no longer mine to give. He had killed it with every lie, every touch that didn't belong to me. In the days that followed, I packed my things. The house that once felt like a prison now became a battlefield I had already won. As I walked out the door, he sat at the table, broken, hollow, drowning in the silence of his own mistakes. For the first time in years, I felt free. I had carried the weight of betrayal long enough, and now it was his turn to live under its shadow. My revenge was not loud or violent. It was quiet, calculated, and final. I didn't just leave him. I left him with nothing, no respect, no love, no peace. Only the memory of the night he lost everything because he thought I would never fight back, and that was my justice.